This is one of those questions that's been bugging people for, what, 20 years now? Can you believe Batman Begins is 20 years old? Came out back in 2005, a lifetime ago. And ever since that movie dropped, everyone's been wondering the same thing. Where the hell is Robin in Christopher Nolan's Batman movies? It's the elephant in the room. You've got Batman, Alfred, the Joker, but no Boy Wonder. And it's not like they just forgot about him. Nolan and his team made a very, very deliberate choice to keep him out. And when you really break it down, you start to see that leaving Robin out wasn't just a choice. It was the secret ingredient. It's the very thing that made the whole trilogy work. And it's why we're still talking about these movies here in 2025 like they came out yesterday. All right, so the first thing you got to understand is what Nolan was even trying to do. His whole thing was realism. You have to remember what the world was like back in the mid-2000s, after 9/11. Everything got super serious, gritty, and grounded. People wanted stories that felt real. Nolan looked at Batman and basically asked, what if this was real? What if a billionaire in our world actually decided to do this? His Gotham wasn't some spooky gothic dreamscape. It was, for all intents and purposes, Chicago. It had corrupt politicians, mob bosses, and a stock market. It felt tangible. Now, into that world, try to drop Robin. First off, just the look of the character is a problem. Robin in the comics is a walking traffic light, bright red, yellow, green. He's designed to be a splash of hopeful color next to Batman's darkness. But in Nolan's world, Batman wears black, military-grade tactical armor. He looks less like a superhero and more like a spec ops soldier. Can you imagine a dude in a bright red and yellow suit running around next to Batman's tank, the Tumbler? It would look ridiculous. It would completely shatter that serious, grounded vibe Nolan worked so hard to build. And okay, let's say you get past the costume, you still have the fundamental believability problem. How do you even explain his existence in a way that doesn't make Batman look like a complete monster? Hey, I'm a billionaire who dresses like a bat to fight domestic terrorists, and this is my teenage intern. Don't worry, his main weapon is a stick. It just doesn't fly. In a world with Heath Ledger's Joker, a guy who puts knives in people's mouths for fun, bringing a kid into that fight feels less like heroism and more like straight-up criminally negligent child endangerment. It's a believability gap so wide that Nolan just wasn't willing to jump. But the biggest reason, and this is the one that really matters, is that these movies were never about Batman and Robin. They were about Bruce Wayne. They were a deep dive into the mind of this one solitary, messed up guy. Adding a sidekick would have completely thrown that focus out of whack. And that brings us to the next big hurdle. Robin isn't just a minor character you can drop in for a few scenes. He's a huge part of the lore. If you want to do Robin, you have to do him right. And that means you have to reshape the entire movie around him. Think about it, you can't just have him show up one day. You've got to tell his whole tragic circus origin story or some updated version of it. That takes up a lot of screen time. Then you have to show Bruce taking him in, training him, building that trust. That's a massive storyline all on its own. The Dark Knight trilogy is already packed with story. Adding Robin's entire character arc would be like trying to shove a whole extra movie into one that's already full. He'd basically become the second main character. And then all of a sudden, the story isn't just about Bruce's lonely burden anymore. It's about a team. It's about partnership and hope. And that's a cool story for sure. But it's not the one that Nolan wanted to tell. He was interested in the lonely, tragic figure, and he saved those themes of hope and passing the torch for the very, very end of his trilogy. On top of that, look at who's already in these movies. Bruce's team was already stacked. He didn't need a Robin because he already had his support system to spread out across different people. You've got Alfred, you've got Lucius Fox, the Q to his James Bond, who builds all his gadgets. You've got Commissioner Gordon, his only true ally in the Force. And for the first two movies, you have Rachel Dowse, who is the whole reason he's doing this. She represents the normal life he can never have. These are all major characters. Throwing Robin in there would just mean less time for everyone else, and the emotional weight would get stretched thin. So let's just game this out for a second. Where would you even put him in the timeline? In Batman Begins? No way. Bruce is still figuring out how to be Batman. He's just getting started. It's like trying to teach someone how to drive while you're still reading the car's manual yourself. The whole movie is about Bruce finding his own identity. A sidekick would just be a massive distraction. Okay, how about The Dark Knight? Dude, are you kidding me? Imagine Robin in The Dark Knight? The entire movie is this intense psychological chess match between Batman and the Joker. The tone is dark, heavy, and desperate. The Joker would have had Robin for breakfast. It would have completely thrown off that perfect tragic triangle between Batman, Joker, and Harvey Dent. So that leaves the finale, The Dark Knight Rises. This is the one where it feels like he could fit, right? The movie's all about legacy. But by this point, it's way too late in the game. You've got Bane, Catwoman, a city under siege, Bruce being broken and having to rebuild himself. The story's already bursting out of the seams. But honestly, all of that stuff, the realism, the crowded story, it all comes back to one simple, powerful idea. Nolan's Batman is a lonely, broken dude. At its core, this trilogy is about a man so shattered by trauma that he can't let anyone get close. Seeing his parents murdered didn't just make him sad, it fundamentally broke something inside him. For this version of Bruce, being Batman isn't a cool hobby, it's a cage, it's an obsession, it's a self-destructive coping mechanism for a wound that never, ever heals. Alfred is constantly telling him, you can't do this forever, this isn't a healthy life. Batman is an illness. Giving him a sidekick is like giving him a friend. It's a form of therapy. And Nolan's whole point is that this version of Bruce rejects therapy. He pushes everyone away, he breaks his relationship with Alfred, he loses Rachel. His entire journey is defined by being completely and utterly alone because he believes that's the only way he can carry this impossible burden. Putting a kid in the mix, this guy can barely take care of himself. How is he supposed to be a father figure? It would go against the very DNA of the character Nolan spent 3 films building. So, after all that, after 3 movies of saying no Robin, Nolan goes and does the most Nolan thing ever in the final minutes of his final film. He basically gives us Robin, just not in the way anyone expected. He gives us John Blake. Think about it. Blake is everything Robin is supposed to be, just filtered through Nolan's realistic world. He's a young, idealistic cop who hasn't been broken by Gotham's corruption yet. He has that same fire and sense of justice that Bruce had at the very beginning. He figures out Batman's identity all on his own. He's the next generation. He's the successor. He's the Nolan Robin. And then you get that final perfect scene at the end of The Dark Knight Rises. Blake inherits the Batcave, the keys to the kingdom. He's going to carry on the mission. And just as you're processing that, you get that chef's kiss moment from the city clerk. You should use your legal name. I like that name. Robin. And the whole theater, everyone who had been asking that question for years, just went, oh, I see what you did there. It was Nolan's way of acknowledging the legend. He honored the idea of Robin, the idea of legacy, of passing the torch, without ever breaking the rules of his own universe. He gave us the function of Robin without the bright yellow cape. And it was perfect. So when you look back, especially now in 2025, you see that not having Robin wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was the whole point. That trilogy set a benchmark for superhero movies that people still talk about, and it did it by sticking to its guns. It told a complete, focused story about one man's journey through hell and back. Adding Robin would have made it a totally different, and honestly probably a much weaker story. Nolan wasn't telling the story of the dynamic duo, he was telling the story of the Dark Knight. And for that story to truly hit home, the knight had to be alone.